I was 6 months pregnant when Pablo and I had a huge fight, and he threw me out of the house. Penniless, I hid in a convenience store at the corner, trying to warm myself. As I stared blankly at the steam rising from the Odin pot, the store clerk approached me. "Hello, miss. We have one last bottle of memory loss water left. Would you like it?" I froze, then let out a bitter laugh. "I don't have any money." She smiled faintly. "You don't need money, just something from your body in exchange." Instinctively, I lifted my hand and touched my swollen belly. "This?" I asked softly. "Can I trade this?" Chapter 1. I pushed open the door of the convenience store. A gust of cold wind rushed straight down my neck. I had barely taken 2 steps when Pablo's voice came from behind me. "Camila, haven't you made enough of a scene?" I turned around and saw him striding toward me. He hadn't even changed his shoes, still wearing his fuzzy slippers from home. "How old are you, huh? Still pulling this runaway act? You're 6 months pregnant and still so temperamental. What if something happened to you in the middle of the night?" Before, I would have snapped right back at him. We could have argued so loudly the entire street would hear. But tonight, I just listened in silence. Too tired to fight anymore. He kept scolding, but maybe because I was unusually quiet, he gradually calmed down. His voice softened. He sighed, reached out, and pulled me gently into his arms. "All right, it's cold outside. Let's go home." Back at home, the warmth wrapped around my body. He crouched down, changed my shoes for me, and looked up. "Are you hungry? What do you want to eat? I'll make it for you." I shook my head. "I'm not hungry." He frowned. "You didn't eat anything tonight out of spite. How can you not be hungry? Even if you aren't, the baby still needs to eat." Without waiting for a response, he went straight to the kitchen. Soon, he brought out a steaming bowl of seafood noodles piled high with abalone, sea cucumber, and lobster meat, almost overflowing. Pablo was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, a man who'd never so much as boiled water. But ever since I got pregnant, he refused to let me order takeout or hire a maid. He insisted on cooking every meal himself. The problem was, his cooking was terrible. He mostly boiled everything in water, adding only a pinch of salt for flavor. And I had always loved spicy food. The hotter, the better. "Is it good?" He sat across from me, watching me intently. I nodded, picked up some noodles, and said softly, "It's fine." But the seafood hadn't been cleaned properly. The fishy taste was strong, making the bland broth even harder to swallow. I forced down each bite one after another, ignoring the nausea rising in my throat. Then his phone rang sharply. "Something urgent at the company," he said as he grabbed his coat and car keys. "Stay home and don't go out again." The door slammed shut with a loud bang. I put down my chopsticks, staring at the half-eaten noodles. My stomach churned violently. I ran to the bathroom and threw up until I was dizzy and weak. When it was finally over, I leaned against the cold tile wall, tears streaming uncontrollably down my face. I didn't want to live like this anymore, this bland, suffocating life that made me sick to my core. I pulled out my phone and, with a surge of defiance, ordered extra spicy hot pot and 3 pounds of chili crayfish. The food arrived quickly. I ate with reckless abandon, tears mixing with sweat and chili oil. It was the most satisfying meal I'd had since being with Pablo. When I was done, I lay down alone on the big double bed and slept dreamlessly through the night. Chapter 2. Pablo didn't come home that night. He didn't even send a message. The next morning, he finally called. His tone was its usual commanding one. "I left an important document in the study. Bring it to the Y Resort Hotel now." I didn't ask questions. I found the file and took a taxi to the hotel. At the grand entrance, the security guard stopped me. "Sorry, this is a members-only area. You'll need an internal invitation to enter." I pulled out my phone and called Pablo. Once, twice, no answer. The wind was biting cold. I pulled my coat tighter and waited. Nearly an hour passed. My feet had gone numb when I finally saw Pablo's assistant, Elise, rushing out toward me. "Madam, so sorry, so sorry. Mr. Pablo's in a meeting. She apologized repeatedly and led me to a large villa, saying Pablo had been working there lately. When Pablo saw me, his brow furrowed immediately. I asked you to bring a file. How could you take so long? You can't even do something this simple. I was already there. I couldn't get in. I called you many times, but you didn't. He cut me off, impatient. Enough excuses. You can't even handle this and you still dream of going back to work. You can't deliver a document properly. What else can you possibly do? His words pierced like needles. I had brought up working again many times, but he always refused. I, Pablo, don't need my woman out there showing her face to make money. Just stay home and enjoy life. I took a deep breath and swallowed my frustration. The file's delivered. I'll go now. What's the rush? His tone softened a little. Wait in my office. I'll take you out for lunch after the meeting. Before I could refuse, he was already surrounded by his team and walking away. Elise led me to his office. The moment I opened the door, it was like stepping into a beauty pageant. 7 or 8 young, gorgeous women sat at their desks, each perfectly made up and dressed to impress. Pablo had 2 unshakable rules for hiring secretaries. 1, they had to be beautiful. 2, they had to be under 25. People in the industry jokingly called his secretary team the Goddess Squad. I, in my bulky down jacket, walking among them, must have looked like a penguin lost in Swan Lake. I didn't care. I just sat down on the sofa. But I could feel their curious stares sticking to me like glue. Their voices were low, but every word reached my ears clearly. Who's that? A new face, wearing an extremely short pencil skirt, looked me up and down. She nudged Elise and asked in a sugary tone, Elise, who's this? Elise answered quietly, the boss's wife. The young secretary's eyes widened, and her voice jumped slightly in surprise. The boss's wife? Is she a celebrity or something? She's covered up like one. Elise shook her head. No, she's not. The girl pursed her lips, her tone dripping with mockery. Oh, not a celebrity? Then why all the hat and mask, trying that hard to look mysterious? Another girl beside her tugged her sleeve, trying to stop her, but she ignored her completely, giving me a bold, disdainful look before sneering again. Maybe it's because she's not very good looking. And look at her figure. It's huge, like a water barrel. I lowered my eyes. Even the thick down jacket couldn't hide my bloated, misshapen body. Ever since getting pregnant, my weight had been changing day by day. Every curve, every bit of my old figure was gone. As for why I wore a mask and a hat, it was because of Pablo. He said it was for my protection. He had made many enemies in business, and he didn't want anyone targeting me. Elise scolded the young secretary in a low voice. Watch your mouth. The boss loves his wife. Show some respect. The girl pouted, rolled her eyes, and looked utterly unimpressed. I gestured calmly toward her. You. Go get me a cup of coffee. When Pablo came out of his meeting, the first thing he saw was the cup of coffee sitting in front of me. His brow instantly furrowed. Who made you that coffee? The young secretary immediately jumped up, eager to take credit. It was me. I made it for Madam. Pablo's gaze snapped toward her like a whip, his tone sharp and cold. Throw it out. The smug look on her face froze. Her hands trembled as she picked up the cup, nearly spilling it. What's wrong with you? Then Pablo turned to me, his voice full of reprimand. Can you even drink coffee right now? Do I have to remind you of this kind of common sense every time? How old are you? She's young and ignorant, but what's your excuse? The entire office area went dead silent. Every secretary lowered her head, terrified of drawing his anger. His words twisted something deep in my chest. I swallowed the bitterness in my throat, tugged lightly at his sleeve, and broke the suffocating silence. I'm hungry, I said softly. His face was still tight, but he took out his phone and ordered a nutritious meal from the hotel kitchen. The food arrived quickly, beautifully plated, premium ingredients, mild and healthy, perfectly in line with his expectations. He didn't sit down with me. Take your time eating. I've got a team dinner downstairs in the courtyard. I walked out onto the balcony overlooking the courtyard. And there it was, his so-called team dinner. A long buffet table stretched across the yard. His beautiful secretary squad was gathered around him, radiant with laughter and makeup, clinking glasses, their faces glowing under the lights. He stood in the center, confident and casual, one hand holding a wine glass, the other resting naturally on the back of a young secretary's chair. He looked like a king among his adoring courtiers. And she was his favorite concubine. My memory flashed back to a few years ago. When we had just gotten married, I had once been jealous of his overly glamorous secretary team and asked him to replace them. He had laughed, called me petty, and said secretaries were the company's image. I should be more understanding, more mature. He cupped my face back then and swore that in this lifetime, both his heart and body belonged to me alone. For years, he had indeed never been caught in any scandal, not openly anyway. But now, down in that courtyard, that same secretary in the short skirt laughed sweetly and picked up a grape, holding it up to his lips. He didn't hesitate. He leaned forward and ate it like it was the most natural thing in the world. The air felt stuck in my chest, the image burning my lungs. Then that same girl stood up, apparently heading toward the swing set nearby. With a delicate cry, she accidentally stumbled, right into his arms. Pablo's hand moved instinctively to steady her by the waist, and he chuckled teasingly. "See, I told you to stop dieting. Now you can't even walk straight." Then, with ease, he scooped her up in his arms and carried her to the swing, gently setting her down. The scene stabbed my eyes like shards of glass. I gripped my cold phone so tightly it hurt, then hurled it with all my strength toward the laughter below. Splash! The phone crashed straight into the heated pool, sending up a huge spray of water. The laughter stopped instantly. Everyone froze, staring up in shock. Pablo looked up too, and his gaze found me immediately, standing on the balcony above. Across that distance, our eyes met. Clutching the railing, I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Pablo, get up here now." He came quickly, bursting into the room. His face was thunderous. I grabbed a pillow and threw it at him. He didn't dodge. The pillow hit him softly and fell to the floor. His expression darkened. "What are you throwing things for now?" I pointed at the healthy meal on the table. "Why do you get to eat barbecue and drink wine while I'm stuck with this crap?" He replied coldly, "Camila, be reasonable. You're pregnant. The doctor said you need to eat light. This is for your own good. After the baby's born, you can eat whatever you want." Okay. Chapter 4. Again, the child. How much more must I sacrifice for this child? Besides, I never even liked children. It was Pablo who secretly replaced my birth control, and that's how I ended up pregnant. He walked over, picked up the chopsticks, and lifted a piece of boiled vegetable toward my mouth. His tone softened, coaxing me like a disobedient child. Open your mouth." I turned my head sharply to the side, avoiding the vegetable. Tears welled up uncontrollably. Child, is that all you see, the child? Just because I'm pregnant, I can't even choose what to eat anymore? I'm a living person, not your breeding machine." Pablo's expression darkened completely. He set down the chopsticks with a heavy thud. "You're about to become a mother. Can't you stop being so stubborn and irrational?" He sat beside me, gripping my shoulders firmly. "Be good, stop it. Just endure 4 more months. Once the baby is born, it'll all be over. After this one, we won't have any more." He picked up the bowl again, scooped some rice, and brought it to my lips. His eyes were filled with determination. It was clear he wouldn't stop until I ate. I had no strength to resist. I opened my mouth and mechanically swallowed the tasteless food. He continued feeding me, one spoonful after another, almost forcing me to finish everything. "Good girl," he finally said, satisfied. He raised his hand to stroke my head, but I instinctively dodged. His hand froze midair and his gaze darkened. Just then, there was a cautious knock at the door. It was that same young secretary from earlier. She peeked in, holding a plate of bright red hawthorn berries. "Madam, these just arrived, fresh hawthorn from up north. They're sweet and sour, perfect for your appetite. Please try some." Pablo stood up and took the plate. Thank you. He paused, glanced at her, and said, I'll be giving a media interview soon. Stay here and take care of Madam. The secretary's smile faltered, but she didn't dare object. She pouted slightly. Yes, boss. Pablo strode out of the room. The secretary sighed dramatically and began pacing restlessly, clearly annoyed. She kept glancing toward the door, her mind already at the interview site. You don't have to stay here, I said. Go do your work. Oh no, she said quickly. The boss told me not to leave your side. I have to follow orders. A wave of irritation rose in my chest. Rather than suffocate in the same room with her, I might as well go out. Fine, I said, standing up. Let's go watch the interview. Her eyes lit up immediately. She hurried after me. The interview was being held in the hotel's grand banquet hall. When we arrived, the room was packed with reporters, cameras flashing toward the man on stage, dazzling, confident, commanding attention. Pablo sat gracefully, answering questions with charm and humor, drawing waves of laughter from the audience. A female reporter stood up to ask, Mr. Pablo, congratulations on being voted the most popular entrepreneur of the year once again. We've noticed you have a large female fan base, and everyone's very curious about your relationship status. May I ask, are you married? Instinctively, I clenched my fists. On stage, Pablo faced the camera, his voice firm. No, beside me, the secretary let out a barely audible snicker. TSK, so he's not married after all. What's the point of pretending to be the boss's wife then? Yes, I wasn't anyone's Mrs. CEO. Pablo and I had never registered our marriage, never held a wedding. He once told me that as the head of a listed company, his marital status had to be made public. For my safety and to avoid being targeted by his business rivals, we couldn't make it official yet. And I believed him. The reporter pressed further. Then, Mr. Pablo, does that mean you're currently single? Pablo smiled smoothly at the microphone. Yes. A sharp buzz exploded in my mind. Next to me, the secretary could barely contain her glee, her face glowing with mockery and delight. My blood seemed to turn to ice. The world went dark around me. My vision blurred, spinning, twisting, everything distorting into chaos. Then the shouts came. Someone's fainted. There's so much blood. And before I lost consciousness completely, I vaguely heard a voice in the distance. Hoarse, panicked, broken. Wife. Pablo's scream. Chapter 5. I woke up to the sharp smell of disinfectant. Pablo was sitting beside the hospital bed. His expensive suit was wrinkled beyond recognition. His trousers stained with dark dried blood. One of his hands clutched mine tightly, while the other supported his forehead. His eyes were closed, brows knitted together. Dark circles heavy under them. He must have stayed here all night. Sensing movement, he jolted awake. When he saw my eyes open, he immediately leaned closer. His eyes bloodshot. His voice was hoarse and trembling. You're awake, honey. Do you feel any pain? Does your head hurt? Your stomach? I didn't answer. I struggled to lift my other hand and touched my abdomen. It was empty. Where's the baby? Pablo's eyes turned red, moisture gathering in them. He lowered his head, his shoulders shaking slightly. Gone. Honey, our baby is gone. He sounded like a man who had just lost the most precious thing in his world, consumed by grief. I closed my eyes. Hot tears slid from the corners and soaked into my hair. He pressed his face against mine. Why? I was so careful. I swear I was. His voice broke. Maybe it was the hawthorn. It promotes blood flow. It's my fault. I didn't know you couldn't eat that. I shouldn't have let her bring it in. His belated remorse made my temples throb in pain. My head hurts, I interrupted weakly. Shut up. He fell silent immediately, his red eyes lost and helpless. After a while, he steadied himself and tried to comfort me with that same tone he always used. Honey, don't be too sad. We're still young. The baby. I'm not sad at all. I opened my eyes and cut him off, calm and cold. He froze, clearly unprepared for that response. It's okay, he said hesitantly. Once you recover, we can try again next time. I don't want to have another. I looked him in the eye and repeated clearly, I don't want children. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, staring at me in confusion. I knew what he was thinking. Deep down, he was an old-fashioned man, the kind who believed a perfect life meant a loving wife and children, a complete family. When I'd first found out I was pregnant, he'd been giddy like a child. He personally oversaw the renovation of 2 children's rooms, one painted sky blue with toy cars and dinosaurs, the other pink, filled with Barbie dolls and plush toys. Back then, he'd held me in his arms, smiling with rare tenderness. No matter if it's a boy or a girl, we'll only have this one. We'll give it all our love. Now those 2 rooms would forever remain empty. This miscarriage was just an accident. He tried to reason with me. Next time I'll be more careful. I'll take even better care of you. I don't want children. I said it a 3rd time. Pablo's eyes dimmed, gradually turning dark and unreadable. His eyes were bloodshot when he finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. All right, as you wish. No more children. He paused as if making a painful decision. When you're discharged, I'll get a vasectomy. I won't let you suffer again. I pulled my hand from his grasp and turned my back to him. I'm tired. I want to sleep. Please leave. A quiet choke escaped his throat. All right. I won't bother you. He stood up, tucked in my blanket gently. Rest well. I'll go home and bring you some clean clothes. Chapter 6. I stayed in the hospital for 3 days. Pablo kept insisting I wasn't fully recovered and wanted me to stay longer, but I couldn't stand the stench of disinfectant anymore. I insisted on being discharged. Back in that wide, cold house, a thought rose in my mind. I want to go back to my hometown for a while. My hometown was a quiet seaside town. Pablo didn't hesitate. Of course. Once I finish this acquisition case, I'll go with you. We can treat it as a little getaway. No need. I'll go alone. His expression stiffened. He watched me carefully as if afraid to say the wrong thing. Honey, are you angry with me? Do you think I didn't take good care of you, or the baby? I forced a faint smile. No, don't overthink it. After a moment's silence, I added, also, I want to buy a house there. All right, he agreed instantly, almost too quickly, as if eager to make amends. I'll handle it. You can pick any place you like. The very next day, he had everything arranged. A luxury oceanfront apartment, the keys placed directly in my hand. The property title had only my name on it. Then, through a complicated overseas account, he transferred a large sum into my card. The text alert chimed. I stared at the long string of numbers, dazed. His voice was low, his smile bitter. It was meant to be for the baby, education, living expenses, but we won't need that anymore. Take it. Use it however you want. A tear slipped down from the corner of his eye. I looked at the cold, emotionless transaction message glowing on my phone screen, and suddenly my vision burned with heat. I gazed at the man before me, now worn and fragile, and asked softly, Pablo, will you have hot pot with me? The spicy aroma of chili oil filled the little restaurant, steam curling through the air. Boss, do you have any private rooms? I asked through my mask. The busy owner didn't even look up. Private rooms? All taken. You'll have to wait or sit in the main hall. Pablo squeezed my hand. We can sit in the hall, it's fine. I glanced at him in surprise. Before, he'd never allowed that, always insisting on private rooms only. Too noisy, too crowded, too public, he'd say. This time I shook my head. No. Let's wait for a private room, I said, pulling my hand from his. I prefer somewhere quiet. His face was too recognizable. I didn't want anyone seeing us. Not now. After more than an hour, we finally got a small private room. The hot red broth soon began to boil, full of chili and peppercorns. After just a few bites, Pablo was sweating, breathing hard, gulping down a bottle of cold water. Maybe, We should switch to a mild broth? You can have the spicy side, I suggested, watching his flushed face. No need, he said quickly, dipping another slice of beef into the fiery soup. I should get used to it. I can't have you always giving up the spicy side for me. The steam stung my eyes, making them water. I accidentally inhaled a mouthful of chili oil, coughing hard until tears streamed down my cheeks. Pablo immediately set down his chopsticks, passing me water and patting my back gently. Slow down. Drink some water. He hadn't eaten much yet. His thin lips were already swollen red from the spice, as if stained with blood. As I lowered my head to dip another piece of tripe into the pot, he suddenly spoke. I'm going on a business trip tomorrow. When I get back, let's go register our marriage. My hand froze midair, the piece of tripe dripping red oil. He looked at me, eyes full of hopeful excitement. I consulted a master, Pablo said, his tone full of conviction. Next Thursday is an auspicious day, the last lucky day of the year. As he spoke, he unlocked his phone and turned the screen toward me. On it was an elaborate, luxurious wedding dress design. Once we register, we'll hold the ceremony. I've already asked an Italian atelier to rush the custom order. Look, do you like this design? His eyes were glowing bright and eager, like a child desperate to show off a treasure. The piece of tripe I had dropped into the boiling red oil curled up and stiffened slowly. I asked softly, didn't you once say that for my safety we couldn't register or hold a wedding? The excitement on Pablo's face froze. That was before, when internal conflicts in the group were intense and several projects were on edge. I had too many enemies and was afraid they'd target you. But once this acquisition is completed, no one will be able to shake my position. I'll finally have enough power to protect you properly. He tightened his grip on my hand. I know I've made you suffer a lot in the past, he said, his voice trembling slightly. But not anymore. From now on, you'll stand proudly beside me, openly, without fear. I want everyone to know that you're my one and only wife. The overcooked tripe sank into the churning red broth and vanished beneath the surface. Next Thursday, sure, I murmured, my eyes fixed on the bubbling pot, my voice barely audible. Pablo grinned from ear to ear, his joy almost boyish. He shoved the phone toward me again, his tone impatient and hopeful. So, do you like this dress? I glanced at the ornate gown on the screen, the diamonds, the lace, the impossible extravagance, and nodded faintly. It's nice. Perfect. I'll tell them to speed up production, he said quickly, fingers flying across the screen as he typed. And the wedding, where do you want it? Bali? The Maldives? Or that European castle you mentioned before? I'll make it happen. I lowered my gaze, biting down on the crisp vegetable in my mouth until it snapped. My voice was muffled. Let's just eat. We can talk about it later. The enthusiasm in his face dimmed slightly, his joy dampened by my indifference. Still, he tucked away his phone but kept talking, lost in his own plans. I think Bali and the Maldives would both be great. Sunshine, beaches. Or maybe that European castle. We can shortlist a few and take our time choosing. The wedding should be in spring or autumn. Not too cold, not too hot. You'll be comfortable in your dress. He spoke excitedly about the future, every detail, every plan meticulously thought out, while I stared at the boiling red broth, my expression unreadable. Chapter 7. I didn't hear a single word of what he was saying. When we finished eating, the enthusiastic restaurant owner gave us a pair of bright red matching couple mugs as a gift. Looking at the cups, a sudden thought struck me. I had forgotten something important. Oh right. Last time I went to your company, I think I lost an earring. I want to look for it. Pablo didn't suspect a thing. Wrapping an arm around my waist, he said, sure, I need to stop by the office anyway to grab a document. The office tower still glowed brightly in the night. I walked straight to Pablo's desk and bent down, pretending to search. Did you find it? He asked, walking over with a folder in hand. I shook my head. No, maybe I remembered wrong. My eyes fell on his desk, on a mug printed with the logo of a famous designer brand. Pablo, where's the cup I gave you? It was from our 4th anniversary, a pair of handmade ceramic mugs I'd made myself at a pottery studio. They were ugly cute. One shaped like a proud little tiger with his name on the bottom and the other a squirrel clutching a pinecone with my name carved beneath. I remembered clearly how he had taken the squirrel cup from me, saying, "This one looks like you. I want this one, so I can think of you every time I drink water." Pablo paused, then seemed to recall it. "Oh, that handmade one. Lisa liked it, so she swapped it for this designer cup." Lisa, the secretary who brought me Hawthorne, mocked me in the office, and accidentally fell into his arms. So, he had never fired her. A cold wave of fury rushed through me, my fists trembling. "That's my cup." My voice rose sharply, slicing through the office silence. "Tell her to give it back. Now." My shouting reached the secretary's room. The door opened, and Lisa poked her head in, holding that familiar squirrel mug in her hand. Her face wore a perfect blend of innocence and smugness. "Boss, madam, were you talking about this cup?" I lunged forward, reaching for it. Lisa gasped in feigned panic, her wrist trembling. Crash! The cup hit the floor with a sharp crack, shattering into countless fragments. Lisa covered her mouth, eyes welling up with tears, her voice trembling pitifully. I'm sorry, madam. I didn't mean to." I looked down at the scattered shards, especially the bottom, shattered beyond repair. Strangely, I felt relieved. Before I could speak, Pablo suddenly erupted, like a tiger whose tail had been stepped on. He turned toward Lisa and roared, his fury echoing off the walls. "Are you useless? You can't even hold a cup properly." The raw anger and pain in his tone were so obvious it was as if that broken mug were some priceless treasure. I froze, startled by his overreaction. Pablo dropped to his knees, trembling fingers picking up each shard, piece by piece, as though he could somehow piece it back together. Lisa went pale, completely stunned, probably never having seen him so furious. "Boss, shut up." Pablo barked coldly, not even glancing at her. The sharp edges sliced into his fingers, blood welled instantly, dark red drops staining the white porcelain. I stepped forward, gripping his wrist. "Stop it." He tried to pull away stubbornly. "No, this was made by you." I kept my face blank, emotionless, even as a small laugh escaped me. "You never cherished it when it was whole. And now that it's broken, you suddenly act like it means everything." He jerked his head up, his eyes full of shock and pain. I didn't bother to meet his gaze. "Go wash your hand and bandage it," I said flatly. "I'm tired. I want to go home." He hesitated, then slowly stood. "All right, wait here for me. I'll be quick." As he passed the pale, trembling Lisa, he didn't slow his pace. "You're fired," he said coldly. "Finish your handover today and get out. Don't ever let me see you again." Lisa's knees buckled. She nearly collapsed on the spot. But this time, Pablo didn't spare her a single glance, not even to help her up. Clutching the desk for support, she steadied herself. I didn't look at her either. Turning to Elise, I said calmly, "Please call the cleaning staff to clear up this mess completely." I stood there watching until every last shard was swept into the trash. Only then did I turn back to Elise. "I've separated from Pablo. From now on, don't mention me to him." For a brief moment, surprise flickered across her face, but professionalism quickly took over. She nodded slowly. "Yes, madam." She caught herself mid-word, hesitating. Realizing the title no longer fit, she opened her mouth again, but said nothing. Chapter 8. She probably never even knew my name. Pablo returned soon after, a flimsy band-aid on his finger, the dried blood still visible. "Darling, let's go home," he said softly, reaching for my hand. I only hummed in response and slid both hands into my pockets. When we got home, he started packing for his business trip the next day. I went to take a shower, then climbed into bed and fell into a deep, peaceful sleep, one of the best I'd had in years. The next morning, Pablo had already prepared breakfast. He was holding the kettle, about to make coffee. I walked over and gently pressed down on his hand. "Don't drink coffee," I said. From my bag, I took out a bottle of memory loss water, identical to a normal bottle of mineral water, and handed it to him. Drink this instead. I bought it specially for you. A wave of tenderness flooded his eyes. He had never refused anything I gave him, and this time was no exception. Without even asking what it was, he unscrewed the cap and drank it all in one go. When he finished, he wiped his mouth and smiled at me. What kind of water is this? It tastes different. I looked at him and smiled, a genuine, weightless smile. As long as you like it. At the door, as he was leaving, he leaned down out of habit to kiss me. I turned slightly. His lips brushed my cheek instead. He didn't seem to mind, pulling his suitcase with a cheerful tone. Wait for me, darling. I stood by the door, looking into his eyes. My voice was calm. Goodbye, Pablo. After he left, I moved quickly. I erased every trace of myself from the house. Clothes, skincare, books, even the bowl and chopsticks I always used in the kitchen. Not a single strand of hair was left behind. Everything was packed into boxes and shipped to my seaside hometown. When the courier carried away the last box, I stood in the empty, cold living room and looked around. There was no longer any sign that I had ever lived here. Winter at home was warm. Even in December, the temperature hovered around 20 degrees. The sea breeze carried a hint of salt and comfort. I opened a small cat cafe. The cats I raised were sleek, affectionate, and soon became local favorites. The shop thrived quickly. One lazy afternoon, sunlight spilling through the windows, I dozed off on the couch with a ragdoll cat in my arms. The warmth of the sun made both of us drowsy and content. The wind chime at the door jingled softly. Welcome, I called out, lifting my head. The moment I saw the person who entered, my body froze, my arms instinctively tightening around the cat. It was Pablo. Chapter 9. He had lost a lot of weight. His cheeks were slightly sunken, and his complexion was an unhealthy shade of pale. Exhaustion and weariness were etched deeply between his brows. He walked toward me. My whole body tensed. My fingers unconsciously tightened around the soft fur of the cat in my arms. The cat meowed in protest, squirming unhappily. Pablo stopped in front of me, his gaze falling on the cat I was holding. The way he looked at me was completely unfamiliar, like he was staring at a stranger on the street. And yet, beneath that strangeness, there flickered a faint trace of confusion, of something lost. Excuse me, he spoke at last, his voice hoarse. Is the cat in your arms for sale? The distance, the unfamiliarity in his tone was so real, so final. The weight in my chest sank heavily. The memory-erasing water had truly worked. I'm sorry, I heard myself say, my voice calm and detached. This one isn't for sale. He persisted. I really like it. I'll pay any price. Tens of thousands, hundreds if needed. Name it. I shook my head firmly. No amount of money can buy it. A clear flicker of sadness crossed his face. He looked lost, as though confused by his own strange obsession. Forgive me, he murmured, almost to himself. I saw it through the shop window earlier, and it felt familiar. It made me feel like I've forgotten something important. I froze. Before I got pregnant, I had a beautiful ragdoll cat named Coco. But when Pablo learned about the pregnancy, he insisted that pregnant women can't be around pets. Despite my protests, he secretly gave Coco away. After leaving him, I spent months searching before finally finding Coco again. All ragdolls look alike, I said, turning away from his confused gaze. You can take a look at the other cats instead. He didn't. He just shook his head helplessly like a lost child and slowly walked out of the store. The next day, I saw him again, at the corner near my shop. He had completely forgotten meeting me yesterday. Frowning, he studied his phone's map. When he noticed me, his face lit up with relief as though he'd found help. Excuse me, he asked politely. Could you tell me how to get to Time Cafe? Like a stranger with a kind heart, I smiled faintly and pointed the way. Turn left at the next intersection. It's about 100 meters ahead. Thank you, he said, nodding before walking off briskly. Time Cafe. That was the little coffee shop I had once mentioned to him offhand, saying I liked the name because it sounded beautiful. The convenience store clerk had been right. Those who drink memory-erasing water truly forget, completely. Even if they meet again, there won't be a trace of recognition. He had truly completely forgotten me. Good. Later, I saw his name again, in the financial news. The resort he had acquired and remodeled, Y Resort, had officially reopened under a new name, Lucas Resort. During the grand opening, a reporter interviewed him. Mr. Pablo, may I ask, what's the meaning behind the name Lucas? On screen, Pablo stood tall in a perfectly tailored suit. His smile was impeccable, but hollow. Lucas, he said softly, is the name I chose for my child. This resort is my gift to them. Lucas. That was the name he'd picked after flipping through dictionaries for days when we found out I was pregnant. He'd said it could suit either a boy or a girl. The reporter chuckled. But Mr. Pablo, you're not married yet. In fact, you've said you're single. Isn't it early to be naming future children? Pablo's brows furrowed, suddenly his voice sharpening with irritation. Who said I'm not married? I am married. I have a wife. And a child. The reporter froze, confused. But, you said in your last interview just a month ago that you were single. Pablo's face went white as though struck in the head. He clutched his forehead, staggering slightly. No, I have a wife, I do. His eyes darted around wildly, his voice rising, breaking. He lifted his head and shouted into the crowd, desperate and lost. My wife. Where's my wife? Then, to everyone's shock, he suddenly bolted toward the heated pool and jumped in. He couldn't swim. He'd nearly drowned as a child and had been terrified of water ever since. Elise, panicking, leaped in after him trying to save him. But Pablo fought her off, thrashing violently, screaming into the empty air. Wife? Where are you? Why aren't you saving me? Through the cold phone screen, I watched him sink helplessly into the blue water. And I remembered, our first meeting had been the same. He had jumped into the ocean after his parents died, ready to end his life. And I had jumped after him, pulling him out. He had fallen in love with me from that moment on. An obsessive, consuming love. You saved me, he'd said. I love you. But his love was not the kind I wanted. Our tragic entanglement had begun in water. And now it ended there too. Just before his body disappeared beneath the surface, the last thing I heard through the video was his broken, desperate scream, wife. Later, rumors spread. They said the young CEO had developed a severe case of hysteria. He no longer ran his company. Instead, he wandered aimlessly through all the places he'd once gone with his wife. He would stop strangers, eyes lost and vacant, asking over and over, have you seen my wife? Do you know where my wife is?